the Federation remains stable under the circumstances. On the members first, the meeting noted that progress has been registered so far, in particular in strengthening organizational machinery to place our members at the center of everything we do as mandated by our 13th Cosatu National Congress. However, we recognize and note that alongside the solid advances that we are making are some shortcomings and challenges that still remain to be overcome in the coming year and beyond. Therefore, in addition to the identifying new tasks, this shall constitute part and parcel of our new program. The 2021 year of the local, the CC resolved to declare year 2021 as the year of the local that will focus on building the organization at the workplace level. We shall use our ongoing recruitment campaign to anchor this enormous task of building organization on the ground. This means that the Federation and its union will focus on waging real struggles at the workplace level. We shall be focused on rebuilding our locals to reflect the structural economic changes that is also associated with the changing workplace organization and mode of work. On solidarity and mass mobilization, the Federation shall introduce a systematic program on ideological and organizational education and training. We'll also deepen a mass mobilization program geared at responding to unfolding economic crisis involving progressive mass-based organization in particular and progressive civil society structures in general. Both the global capitalist crisis and COVID-19 expose the crisis of capitalism. Therefore, our task is to unite the working class as a whole. The CEC encourage all Cosatu unions to commit themselves to pledge solidarity with the struggle of other unions, in particular other Cosatu affiliated unions. On the Communication Workers Union and NEHAU strikes, the CC offer its full support to the workers at the SABC who are pushing back against retrenchment under the leadership of our affiliate union COO and other unions in the institution. SABC is too important an institution to allow the reactionary board members and managers to guard like we have seen other state institutions. If we are to have a developmental state and have a participatory democracy, SABC needs to be strengthened and not to be weakened. We also offer total support to community health workers who are currently on strike under the leadership of our affiliate NEHAU. The unity and the resilience of these workers is commendable and exemplary. We call on our employers to accede to the fair and legitimate demand of these workers. On the October 7th strike, the CC recognized that our program of action was groundbreaking from a political point of view, as it brought together for the first time workers across trade union federation, marking an important step for the unity of workers. Workers heeded the call, and we shall build on this going forward. On the May Day celebration will continue to be decentralized all across the country, with a national celebration taking place in the Northwest Province. On the bargaining conference, retrenchment and the toolkit, the Watershed Collective Bargaining Organizing and Campaign Conference held on the 11th to the 13th November 2020 produced a strategic directive for our bargaining, organizing and campaign strategies moving forward. The conference noted the challenges faced by the collective bargaining, both in the public and private sectors, and resolved that bargaining council must be strengthened to grapple with the challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic. With many jobs on the line, the conference resolved to develop a retrenchment toolkit that will ensure retrenchment are indeed the last resort for companies. On the public service, the meeting once again praised the sterling work done by the public sector workers to not just fight COVID-19, but to continue to deliver the much needed services, even as they suffer from unwarranted attacks by the current administration. The failure to pay workers their increases and the proposed wage freeze is an insult to these workers. Collective bargaining is a constitutional right, yet this government has gone out on its way to undermine it by abandoning the legally binding agreement and trying to unilaterally impose a wage freeze until 2024. This indifferent attitude will have a huge political cost during the next year local government election. Underpaying public servants will simply spare a brain drain of highly sought-after doctors, nurses, teachers, and further weaken the state capacity to deliver quality public service. On the proposed action plan on the 4th of December 2020, in defense of the collective bargaining in the public service and the private sector, the CC resolved to immediately undertake the following step. 1. The CC will lead a protest action or sit-in at the Union Building on the 4th December 2020 to demand a response from the Presidency on the memorandum submitted on the 7th October 2020. This includes the call for government lead to lead by example by complying with the ILO Convention and respect collective bargaining. We shall write to the ILO urging it to immediately register the protest with the South African government's breach of Convention 154, the right to organize and collective bargaining convention, and Convention 87 on the freedom of association. The ILO must demand some level of accountability from the South African government. All our provincial structure will continue holding demonstration and line-time pickets at the department, institution, and workplace where memoranda were submitted. The CC further condemned BUSA for its anti-worker stance in demanding that government freeze public sector wages. On the socio-economic, on the impact of the austerity budget cuts, in dealing with this current crisis, the South African government has resorted to increasing austerity measures, and as a result, inequality has widened. The increase in inequality means working families' purchasing power is significantly diminished. The recent midterm budget policy statement has continued on this trajectory. This posture of government threatens to lead South Africa into a deeper depression, which will make attempt to resuscitate the economy visually impossible. These austerity measures taken by Treasury also threatens key labor as well as other state institutions like Hawks as well as the Office of the Public Protector. Specifically worrying for Cosatu are the budget cuts in the CCMA. This cut has been so severe that CCMA is struggling to deliver on its legislated mandate. Already the CCMA is starting to feel the impact with its capacity reduced, including closing offices for walk-in cases and conciliation cases. This is taking place as workers are already experiencing a wave of retrenchment, salary cuts, and other labor abuses. They will now be faced with a massive reduced CCMA that will be so starved of resources that will be unable to help thousands of frustrated workers. The Federation has raised this at Parliament and will be requesting an urgent meeting with the National Treasury to demand that this cut be reversed. We demand a budget that will be responsive to the needs of the workers and the poor. On the state-owned enterprises, the CC expressed concerns about the continued deterioration of the state-owned enterprises Many of our SOEs are in varying stages of collapse. We're disappointed that the Presidential State-Owned Enterprise Council is yet to present any convincing plan to reposition or to stabilize the state-owned enterprises. The fact that very little has been done to fix these issues raised by the Auditor General, and that some of these institutions like the SABC are pushing for retrenchment, is offensive and scandalous. Government needs to work with labor and business to develop clear roadmaps to take these SOEs out of the ICU, reposition them to adjust to the changes taking place in their sectors, and enable them to get back on a sustainable trajectory. Retrenchment workers cannot be accepted. The current government will not throw thousands of workers onto the unemployment line. Alternative must be found for workers whose jobs are at risk. On Escom Social Compact, the meeting welcomed the adoption of the Escom Social Compact as a key part of the comprehensive package of economic recovery intervention. We call on social partners to sign it and start the implementation process in order to save jobs. On the economic recovery plan, the CC resolved to further unpack the economic recovery plan at the Federation's February CC. Cosatu in the interim will engage the implementation of the plan at the Economic Recovery Leadership Team in NEDLAC. On corruption and wasteful expenditure, the CC called for more arrest and conviction of criminals who continue to steal inside and outside the government, and that no one is above the law. We reiterate our call for centralization of the public procurement of large items, introduction of online open public procurement platform, the establishment of rapid response anti-corruption courts, and most critically, the banning of politically exposed persons and their spouses and children from doing business with the state. The outright hostility by government to the latter is indicative of a leadership that has lost its moral compass. On COVID-19, the meeting expressed concern over the notable rise in the COVID-19 infection and called on all South Africans to continue to take this deadly virus seriously. This is not time to be complacent, because any reckless behavior put both the lives and the economy at risk. We welcome the extension of the 350 long-term unemployment grant, and we hope that will lay a foundation for adoption of the basic income grant. On politics, on the ANC and the NDR in crisis, the Central Executive Committee concluded that our national democratic revolution has entered a difficult period. The epicenter of these major challenges is within the ANC, that is marred in corruption scandals, public bickering, and is gradually experiencing declined support amongst the people. The meeting lamented the poor state of organizational and personal discipline in the ranks of the ANC and the lack of decisive action by elected officials. The ongoing challenges of unity and cohesion, especially among leadership at all levels of the organization and between the organizational leadership and those deployed in government, is a problem. The lack of political will and decisive strategic leadership in implementing the more challenging socio-economic resolution from the Nasrec conference is deeply worrying. This, combined with the austerity measures that are being implemented by the administration, has put the NDR in a precarious position. On the ANC-NGC, we have noted the release of the ANC-NGC documents, and we shall convene a political commission to help us to develop a posture on the ANC-NGC document and respond comprehensively. The political commission will also help us to develop a minimum program going forward. This mid-term evaluation is important, and it should focus and respond to the pressing organizational challenges, especially on socio-economic policies. We remain hopeful that the NGC will signal a turning point with regard to the internal discipline, decisiveness on the leadership on organizational and socio-economic politics matters, the fight against corruption, relations with other components of the alliance, and in taking forward the mandate of Nazareth. On the Alliance Summit, the CC is looking forward to a great Alliance Summit that was decided by the Alliance Political Council, and we hope it will take place before the local government election next year. This summit is necessary to discuss the content and the character of the national democratic revolution. The current implementation of storage measures reflect a troubling development and what amounts to a strategic deviation. Therefore, the nature of the contradiction is increasingly becoming more than just tactical and political issues. To some extent, they've become strategic and class contradiction that also relate to the ideological contestation of the content and objective of the NDR. We view this attack on collective bargaining and suppression of trade union activity as a way of using a crisis to break the spine of the trade union and reverse the Nazareth policy outcome. These attacks are evident both in the public and private sector. However, the fact that it is a democratic government led by a liberation movement that is part of our own alliance perpetrating these attacks make the case even more shameful. In this regard, the CC warned that the ANC movement is abandoning or dishonoring the Freedom Charter, and it is involved in the erosion of the hard-won democratic gain since 1994. The Freedom Charter says there shall be work and security, and all who work shall be free to form a trade union, to elect their officers, and to make wage agreement with their employers. The same is contained in the RD document, which we are quoting here below. Despite the occasional rhetoric around radical economic transformation, the country is now being handed over to neoliberal Western institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, etc. What we are seeing now is the ANC and its government spitting on the workers and going rogue. This is a development that will not only undermine our national self-determination as a country, but will put into question the ANC historical commitment to a progressive and transformatory vision. Workers demand and deserve answers about this direction of the ANC government that is starting to wage an offensive against workers through retrenchment and wage freezes. This cannot be tolerated because aspirations of the workers and the working class have to be reflected in the ANC government. If it rejects or dishonors this aspiration, it is treating the very foundation of the alliance and making redundant and unnecessary. Given the political significance of 2021, Cosatu shall be convening its central committee and provincial congresses as per our constitutional obligation to assess, clarify, and deepen our perspective as we finalize a clear way forward regarding many challenges facing workers. Towards that end, Cosatu shall be reviewing its medium-term program, formerly known as 2015 Plan, and its economic document, the Growth Path to Full Employment, as a key cornerstone guiding our approach to many complex issues we face. The CC was brief about the development in Limpopo and support the position taken by our provincial structure there, and will be engaging the alliance partners on the way forward. On the delay legislation, the PIC Amendment Bill and the Political Party Funding Act The Cs expressed concern by the increasing tendency by the President and his executive towards undermining Parliament. Parliament has passed several important bills, only for the Presidency to simply ignore them or for the Department to delay indefinitely their implementation. This will lead us to a constitutional crisis. If the President does not want to sign a bill, he must refer back to Parliament. But he can only do so if the bill is unconstitutional or the public participation processes were undermined. Parliament passed the Public Investment Corporation Amendment Bill in March 2019 and the Political Party Funding Bill in 2018. To date, the President has signed the PIC bill, has not signed the PIC Amendment Bill, yet it is critical. It is a critical intervention towards dealing with the massive allegation of corruption and the PIC, at the PIC during the era of the state capture. The President signed the Political Party Funding Bill, but failed to announce a commencement date. We are now approaching the local government election. Government cannot be allowed to continue to undermine Parliament. The President must move with speed to the signing and acting and implementation of the legislation. That is not the virtue. Thank you very much, Comrade Caesar.
Thank you, Nobal. Comrades, that was our very short statement. So we will take clarity-seeking questions. You know that really, if there are any questions, just raise your hand, we are calling you, and you tell us who you are, and then you ask the question. I can see that.
Yeah, so it's Ndayedzo from Power FM. Just two questions for me. You mentioned the fact that this issue of salary freezes will have huge political implications during next year's local government elections. Could you kindly please just expand or elaborate more on that statement? And earlier in the week, the finance minister spoke extensively on SAA and also mentioning that it will be mostly private owned. What's your take on that and that announcement? Thank you.
From ENCA. Mine is just very simple, clarity-seeking question indeed. You say you would be writing to the International Labour Organization. Are things really that bad that you're now contemplating to go to the ILO to report your own government, which you are part of by extension as an alliance partner? Thank you very
much. It's now from Jacaranda FM. I just need clarity on page 5 where Cosatu is talking about the. I just want clarity because it says it rejects our aspirations. It's threatening the very foundation of the alliance. So are you saying that the new liberal way that the ANC is taking is threatening the alliance? And if it is threatening the alliance, will we see any movement from what steps is the alliance going to take? What steps is Cosatu going to take to break away from the ANC? And so, because it seems like it's a threat, but like it doesn't have biting teeth. Like, what is Cosatu really saying? Also, my other question is on the centralization of requirement. Why haven't we seen it happening? What is the holdback, and what steps Cosatu is going to take to push the ANC to actually make the centralization of requirements happen in the next few months before the local government elections?
Silvasuya from UFM. Cosatu has consistently criticized successive ANC leadership from the days of former President Thabo Mbeki and to the current leadership now. How has this love-hate relationship been discussed at this meeting, the meeting that you had? And secondly, local government elections will be held next year. Would you tell people as well to still go ahead and vote the ruling party?
Okay. Thank you for the question.
Can you repeat the first question?
So, they wanted to repeat the question just.
Well, the first one says Cosatu as the islands of the ANC has consistently criticized the ANC since the days of the Thabo Mbeki and the former president to the current administration. Has this love-hate relationship between the ANC and Cosatu been addressed in these meetings that we had? And the second one was, would you tell the people to vote for the ANC in the next year's local government?
Thank you. Leadership.
No, thanks. Let me attempt to respond to some, not all, of the questions that have been posed. Sorry, Ndayedzo, Power FM. The salary freeze, huge implication on local government elections, and Tito's announcement. We were raising this because, and I think it's linked also to your question, Spamandla, the one of the salary freeze, because it is undermining of the collective bargaining, and we don't want it to lose its essence of what it is. But remember, Cosatu has taken in its last conference in 2018 a resolution to support the African National Congress, and that will be evaluated in the Central Committee going to its 14th National Congress, where a decision can then be reversed, changed or. Now, we are raising this and we're saying to the African National Congress and its government that because we're in alliance, Silo, also with the African National Congress, does not make us to be paralyzed on defending our members. We're in alliance with the ANC, but we're independent from the African National Congress. So the salary freeze one, it is the undermining of Convention 154 of the ILO, which the government of South Africa is a signatory to that, but also it has ratified that convention. So you can't ratify a convention and not respect it. So that is why we're going to write to the ILO and say to the ILO, the government of South Africa is undermining a convention that it is a signatory to and that it has ratified. They know the processes. We've been part of the ILO processes where we have also said these are the governments with no taking any favors. We as the Federation have always been at the forefront at the level of the ILO to ensure that any government that undermines any convention must be taken to the International Labour Organization in the conference under the Committee of Application of Standards. So we'll do the same with the government of South Africa. And they know the drill. But where we say it's going to have huge implications, remember, Cosatu took this resolution, but we have always said our support for the ANC is not a blank check. We're not going to wear blindfolders. We need to go out and say to the members and society at large, vote for the African National Congress. But you can imagine the very same workers that took that decision must go and convince others when they themselves may not be convinced. Respecting the decision that exists in the Federation, but when your own government that you want to put in power is the one that has undermined your very own existence and the laws that are supposed to protect you, how do you convince others when you are not convinced yourself? So we're raising this to the African National Congress and say, these are the things that will be playing itself out as much as, because we are not going to be held at ransom because we've got a resolution. Workers are not robots, you know. And you can't say, but we are holding you to your conference resolution, and yet you continue to butcher them in the process. So we're raising this and saying this may have huge implications in the local government elections, because it is Cosatu members that will have to go out and implement their Congress resolution. But if they are not convinced and they feel that they have been attacked by the very same government, what do you expect of them? And we're raising these issues because these are the issues that we are picking up from members. These are the things that workers are saying. And we only speak on behalf of the members that we represent. Well, on Minister Tito Mboweni, I may have missed it. I did not pick it up. But if he says, I'm not sure if he did elaborate.
So he said that government will own part of SAA, but it will be mostly the private sector, and we just need to get on with it and get SAA.
The problem with Minister Tito, I'm not sure that he tweeted or it was a statement.
It was a statement. I think he was speaking to Bloomberg.
The problem is that he's the finance minister. The problem is that he's the finance minister. And you have a minister that is responsible for state-owned entities. You see, so you don't know exactly whom are you talking to. This is exactly what has led us to the problems that we have in the public sector, because you have a minister that is responsible to deal with public sector issues. And you have the Minister of Finance that made pronouncement in the midterm budget statement about the processes that are supposed to be undertaken by a responsible minister. You see, we don't want to continue labeling people here. But really, we continue to raise our frustrations. And we are not sure where are those processes being undertaken. Is he now saying, let's stop any processes that would be undergoing? The minister of the state that is responsible for state-owned entities, if there is a process with the unions internally at SAA and all other processes that must be followed, those processes now do not matter. Because I have decided, as the Minister of Finance, that this is how the ball is going to roll. Perhaps we need more clarity from him. He's speaking as the finance minister, so what is going to happen to these ministers that have departments to be leading? Are they accountable to him, or are they accountable to the president? Because our understanding is that Minister Tito Mboweni is no different from any other minister. He's accountable to the president, just like others. We don't believe that there's a ministry that is super and all other ministries are reporting to. And so, Spamandla, I dealt with I hope I did try to respond to your question in relation to the ILO. When things are bad, we're not going to sugarcoat them, because they affect our members. That is why we are going to take the steps that we're going to take in relation to those issues. Silo, on the love-hate relationship, that's the relationship that we have. It's full of contradictions because of the constituencies that we represent, but we understand how that alliance was formed. And we can, Cosatu will talk, that's why I was saying there's an NGC of the ANC that is coming. The Political Commission of Cosatu will look into the released documents of the ANC NGC. There's an alliance summit that we are looking forward to, that we say it must now take place, the way we are going to go and ventilate our issues as a component of the alliance on a number of issues. So our relationship will continue to have those contradiction, love, hate, call it, but because we are not the desk of the ANC, we are not the league of the ANC, we are a federation that represents over 1.5 million members, and we represent the interest of workers, organized or not organized. So we speak on behalf of those members. And we understand the ANC kuthiwa ngigalele bhayini, so it will represent many interests of all components of society, but we represent the interest of the workers and the working class. So those contradictions will always be there. Yeah, let me allow other leaders to respond to some.
Actually, while you are still responding, if I were to call you Tito Mboweni here to assist, Uti, the new airline will be partly owned by the government and more broadly by private sector investors. So I'm quoting in verbatim.
Yes.
So basically, quickly put, private investors will dominate the ownership, partly owned by government. So that's privatization. That's what Tito said, speaking to Bloomberg.
Well, thank you very much, President. I think you covered this, so just one that is left. But maybe because they have quoted now Tito Mboweni, our friend. I'm sure Cosatu's position is well known in as far as privatization of NSOE is concerned, particularly when it is said that in the main or a majority will be private hands. We looking at a number of the SOEs that we have in South Africa, many of whom are not viable, many of whom we don't think they add value or it is necessary for government to still have them. We have called in the past for amalgamating some of those because we didn't think that it makes sense to have a 740 SOEs. There was a time when we were not even opposed to an equity partner coming to end of SOEs if it's going to liberate the fiscus of the state in continuously bailing it out. But what we have continuously been opposed to is the critical and strategic SOEs such as SAA, Escom and SABC to fall into the hands of a private people that will only focus only on profit. But so the rest of the things we are saying in the statement describe exactly the attitude in the statements of Tito Mboweni, as we call it the neoliberal agenda. So they don't care what South African thinks. They don't care what is best for the South African people, possibly or difficult or even expensive for South Africans to fly SAA once it has got private hands, in the private hands. So that's the one part I wanted to say. But secondly, just to go back to Power FM on the wage bill and the local government, citizens everywhere in the world put a political party or a government into power because it believes that it's going to address or advance their interest. And as far as workers are concerned, they attributed the African National Congress government as part of their transformational agenda to strengthen and develop and defend the workers' rights, including the right to bargain, the right to form trade union. When there's a government that is now leading a campaign to liquidate trade union movement, leading a campaign to take away and strip workers of their power, including to undo the right to earn a living wage and the right to bargain, surely that is not in the interest of those workers or that section of our society. So when it says it's going to be very difficult, we mean that it's going to be very difficult for workers to confidently vote or participate in a process that is going to disenfranchise them or take away their interests and their rights. So that's in a nutshell what we are saying. The President spoke about responded on the ILO, and then you're asking, we're taking our own government because we are part of the alliance. We are taking a South African government who is a member state of the ILO. And countries don't join these international bodies for sweet nothing. They join them, they become members because they know that they have to be accountable from at one point or another. And this is a time that for the first time, maybe let's say this to you, that the last time the South African government appeared in the ILO, it was during the apartheid government. There's never happened in a democratic government that a situation shall arise that our government shall be summoned by the International Labour Organization. So if you ask the question, are things that bad? I'm sure the answer lies there. Things are this bad, that we have to rely on the international bodies to which South Africa is a member because they're supposed to be accountable to. We will have avoided to go that route, but this is one of the avenues that is left for workers to pursue when they feel they're under attack. The last question that I want to, which I think was not dealt, is the neoliberalism, as you put it, my brother, threatening the alliance. What is Cosatu going to do to break away from the alliance? I suppose you think the only way out is for the Cosatu to break away from the alliance. Well, that may not be the only way, but let me say that we are saying in the statement we're going to convene a central committee, which is a higher structure in between Congress, in as far as policy matters are concerned. However, the discussions are taking place inside our federation across a number of affiliates. It must be remembered that this alliance is not somebody's alliance, it's our alliance. It must be remembered that the liberation movement is not somebody else's liberation movement, it is our movement. Majority of our members and those who came before us spent their young life, including their adult life, building and strengthening this movement. And when rogue elements start to dominate and enter into the leadership and then therefore drive our organization into an area that is not what those of us who joined we are aspiring to, there are few choices that are there. One of it is to actually drive away or drive out those rogue elements that are spoiling our alliance. So this, over and over again, many years ago, the workers have always sought to rid of their movement the bad elements that are actually causing our movement to veer away from the ideas of the National Democratic Revolution, that one of making sure that we uplift the standard of the poor in this country. So that's for now, it is the choice according to the resolutions that exist in the Federation that we have. To an extent that at one point a choice could be arrived at that says the best way is for us to get out of this bus. The question will have to be which bus are we now going to climb? Because the transformational agenda in this country is not done. It's still very necessary. It must proceed. The question is which movement and which organ must drive this transformational agenda. And if it comes to a point that this movement is the only one that still carries that aspiration, the choices for workers is to fight, reclaim it, return it to its historical mission, and drive out those who think that they've hijacked our movement. Because walking out is not always, and at this point in time, is not an option for the workers. Thanks.
Okay.
Perhaps there was, the president dealt with we constantly criticize the leadership of the ANC from Mbeki. I don't know why we're not starting with Mandela. Because we did criticize Mandela. When neoliberals sat in this country through what we call GIA in 1996, we were under the presidency of Mandela, and Cosatu was very, very vociferous against that. So we didn't start with Mbeki because that thing of only counting Mbeki, Zuma, and Cyril might create an impression that we were asleep from 1994 and when neoliberals sat in this country. We did criticize Mandela. Fortunately, Mandela understood this thing, but because it is him who actually encouraged us to do so in case the ANC government veer off the way. Whether we did discuss settle this matter in these past 3 days, no, we didn't settle this matter. We continuously analyze and take a posture to continue because we are a critical part inside the movement. Our task is to keep on keeping our movement on toes and keep on reminding the government that they are veering on their way. It's not a question of whether we have settled this matter or not. And like the President says, unfortunately, this is a relationship we have. Thanks. Comrades.
No problem. You want to? Okay. Okay, this is the last round. Baba Kok, I think you are the only one, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see it.
On 16 days of activism, I know it's not part of the statement, but would appreciate something from me and President. Are you happy with the way South Africa in general are dealing with the issue of abuse of women and children and fighting the scared in this country. We only see these heightened campaigns during the 16 days of activism, but other than that, a lot has been happening in South Africa, and it seems as if we are not winning this fight against the abuse of women and children. But also your statement on the issue of corruption, you are calling for more arrests. The Secretary General of the ANC was arrested and charged for fraud, corruption and money laundering. The ANC is grappling with the principle of stepping aside once charged. We understand that the MEC of the ANC will discuss that matter. They have asked for a legal opinion on that. What is your view as Cosatu? Should those who have been charged step aside immediately? Thank you very much.
Well, this is what I'll start with the last question. Firstly, in our statement, we say no one is above the law, and including no one is above the resolutions of the African National Congress. That's why we call on the leadership of the ANC to be decisive in implementing the decisions of the ANC, the conference resolutions. Can't be correct that there's a resolution that seeks legal interpretation and other resolutions, they must just be drawn from the conference papers and be implemented just like that. It cannot be, because we believe actually that when the ANC went to its conference and when it took those resolutions, it understood that there's a constitution, there's law and all of that. But it was doing it because it had to talk to the ANC itself, because ANC is a voluntary organization. So no one is forced, coerced to come and be a member of the ANC. You can come in, you can go. So when there are decisions that are taken by conference on issues of discipline, as an example, they are meant to guard the ANC and those that represent the African National Congress, so that the ANC is different from individuals, because individuals then must submit themselves to the organization's discipline. Now when the conference resolutions now are going to have legal interpretation over what it means just because the ANCSG is finding himself, because remember there are so many, Zandile Kumete, the very same resolution was used of the ANC in Pumala, in Limpopo, VPS, and others. And now what are you having? You are having, because we want to be made to understand, because now we are picking up that is it in Mpumalanga where a comrade that was alleged to have committed a rape crime is now being reinstated because the center is not holding. Because when it comes to the office bearers, we want legal interpretation. But when the provinces of the African National Congress are implementing the very same resolution of the ANC on the discipline of the cadres, there was no interpretation of a legal interpretation of the very same resolution. The NEC was clear then that the Zandile Kumete matter is a matter that the KZN leadership must deal with immediate effect, because this is what the resolution says. And exactly that's what the province did in so many other provinces. But now you're dealing with the Secretary General, you want a legal interpretation. So we are really, as Cosatu saying, the ANC officials must lead. Actually, the Integrity Committee must come in here. Because if comrades are conflicted at the top, then the Integrity Committee, it has a responsibility to make that intervention. Because if that resolution is going to be subject to any other legal interpretation, on the basis of what? On the basis of what? Because this is a voluntary organization. So you can't subject everything else into law when it was understood that the purpose of that resolution that was taken in the conference. Now, on the 16 days of activism, you are correct, Spamali. We have always said that sometimes we spend a lot of money. Maybe COVID is going to spare us this time. We spend a lot of money on organizing events than intervening. We spend millions of rands just for us to make public statements instead of making real interventions. Cosatu issued a statement yesterday on the 16 Days of Activism. But also we want to say that we are now in the process of engaging the Department of Women and Children in the presidency around the National Strategic Plan on gender-based violence and femicide, because there's a national council that must be formed, guided by the legal legislative framework. What Cosatu has been standing against is the realization that the ministry seem to be wanting to put in a board of trustees as an interim structure, which we think it may not be interim, instead of firstly allowing a legal framework to be in place that is going to guide how you are going to put in the National Council. Because we want a structure. For us to deal with gender-based violence in this country, we need a structure that is going to be organic, accountable, transparent, a structure that is not going to be about if you sit in a meeting, you have fiduciary duties and therefore enable you to really deal with issues that are confronting women on the ground. So gender-based violence is a societal issue, and we hope and believe that society at large, individually and collectively, all of us as South Africans, we are not going to be subjective when gender-based violence is at home and be objective when it is next door. We want us to understand what do we mean when we say we want to fight the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide in our country. One was just watching a program on TV on Mojalavo Nutando Noklo. When police, a woman goes to the partner, they have their own differences, but she is now not allowed to see their daughter. It's been since 2016. And when she's thrown with a toolbox, because the partner is a mechanic, a former boyfriend, they immediately go to the police station. The police says, no, but you are coming very late. It's late in the evening. We're unable to help you, but also bring documents. They're asking, but what documents are we supposed to bring? And when they were told who the person, they already knew, the mechanic guy. So it means he's this mechanic that is big in community and which paralyzes even the police to really do what they are expected to do. When women are butchered and battered, they go there and they say, we seek solace in you. We have police that are paralyzed because they have created these relationships that perpetuates gender-based violence. So, yes, we mark it since yesterday, 16 days of activism. But women, and you would notice, during this time, during August month, it is when women get more to be violated by their partners during this time. So there are many things that we think we can do if we all come together, everyone, without pointing a finger to government, because all of us have a responsibility. Omakoti no mazali, amadodakazi no makoti, ikala phaya lanto siphamandla. So kudingeka ukuthi understand ukuthi i-action yam is it not perpetuating my son to continue to be battering umntwana wabantu ngoba sithe uze emendweni. As a sister, when I'm defending my brother, because we think une right to slap umfazi ngoba umfazi aka understand it, because ngokwesintu umfazi umele ukuthoba, are we not perpetuating gender-based violence? So it's a societal matter that all of us, traditional leaders, civil society organization, all of us, trade unions, politicians, churches, we must deal with it for what it is. Until we're able to do so, sizamane siqhubekeka sixoxe into enye because no one wants to take responsibility. It is justifiable, but when it is next door, it is not acceptable. Because
Comrade Sizwe, can I make an addition to just an addition to the 16 days? Thanks. Thank you. In addition is that we have acknowledged that it has now become an event once you talk 16 days of activism. But in across our provinces, in structures, the education towards this subject cuts throughout, having acknowledged that this is not a matter of the 16 days. And just a very shocking example of what has happened on the day that 16 days was launched. A woman and 5 kids were butchered in the Eastern Cape. You've seen that. A very same day of launching. So we having structures across. We even have established male gender champions to try and look into what could the problem be. Where could this really come from? So it's really not a matter of your 16 days. It's still called that, but it cuts across the entire 365 days. Thank you.
What the President may appeal to you is that we went to the ILO for 2 years, South Africa leading trade unions and government, for 2 years debating a convention, a standard on the elimination of violence against women, I mean workers, men and women in the world of work. Not only in the workplace, but in the world of work. And this convention has not been ratified by South Africa. It's moving very, very slow. It's almost a year since that ratification was adopted. What we may appeal here, and for you to be able to engage government, is why it takes so long. Why it takes so long to ratify this convention, in which we're instrumental in developing. It took 2 years to develop it. It's almost now 2 years just to put an instrument. When all our legislation and our talks says we are supporting the elimination against gender-based violence, any violence for that matter, because the history of our country has been very vicious against women who have been abused in the workplace, and when management have been saying this is a criminal matter, they will not be involved. We know the stories of women in the mines underground. We know it everywhere, the harassment of women in this particular case. So it might be an appeal that we just said any platform we should be used, including in the media, as they are going to be entering this period. Ask the government, why are you not ratifying the instrument that will help us in dealing with those issues, so that it does not become just an event during these 16 days of activism. It become a daily issue that we must respect our children and our women. Only the human beings, even animals, respect their children and their spouses, if they call them spouses. But they do respect them. We have not seen them dealing with those issues. We have not seen a bull cow abusing another what you call it, the female of that in that nature. It doesn't happen. I mean, we have seen doves, and they love their partners. We butcher them, and I think that's an appeal that we may just depart with on it.
Maybe just to also say that convention, that convention says to the employers also, you have a responsibility to play. Because when it says elimination of violence and harassment in the world of work, it acknowledges that a world of work is not just a factory floor where a worker goes and clock. It acknowledges that now that we are using different platforms, the changing world of work, harassment can come in many forms, via Zoom, via your cell phone, and the fact that women have suffered violence in the hands of their partners following them from home to work. They wait for you at the gate and they pour you with acid, and you get battered there. So it then says, Convention 190, that employers, you have a responsibility to protect your workers. When they leave home, they are going to work. Until they get to work, they are your responsibility. Until they get inside their homes, they remain your responsibility. If, for an example, on issues of harassment and violence, your institution goes and takes workers out for team building, you are still at work, even if you are having a braai, because you were in an environment where the employer has said, this is where we're going to be for over this weekend. Once I get harassed, even if it's during the jolly time, it is still the responsibility of the employer. So that must acknowledge when I put a case on to eliminate harassment and violence in the world of work. And we know about LGBTQI community that gets to be violated in the workplace and also in the communities. So Convention 190 we're appealing, as Comrade Biggie says, it has to be ratified and domesticated so that workplace policies are aligned with that convention. It is very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, leadership. And thank you, comrades and workers. We appreciate again your attendance. For any one-on-ones, I suppose the NOPs will see whether they can indulge you, but it is breaking this close.
And so we come out of that Cosatu media briefing touching on a range of issues, the briefing ending off on the issue of gender-based violence and femicide in South Africa. Zingiswa Losi speaking about the need for people to call out and stop behaviours in the home and at work in order to try and combat the scourge of gender-based violence, saying that she's actually happy that perhaps this year millions won't be spent on events that don't do much but go into prevention, speaking about the need for proper policing, and also touching there on that ANC step-aside rule, which she says mustn't be applied selectively, there mustn't be legal interpretation and the like, especially when it comes to people who are perhaps more prominent than others, saying that in some instances people just apply the rule, and then when it's more senior members, she mentioned Escom as well, then perhaps there is a talk about legal interpretation and the like. So that Cosatu briefing we come out of, it's time for a break. When I come back, I'll have